Hello, this is Bailey Harris. I want to start by saying that I tried to use the Screencast-O-Matic and the ScreenPal, but it's just not compatible with my devices. I tried with my desktop that has a webcam, I tried with my iPad, and I tried with my laptop that has a webcam. And I created accounts on all of them. I downloaded it and it just wasn't working. I also tried Dropbox Capture. I tried Vimeo, and for some reason my camera is just not working with it. And so my last resort option is to just show you my PowerPoint and read it like this and just talk to you this way. I know it's not what you asked for, and I am using the front camera on my iPhone, and so I know that this will not, like, you can't read this because it's mirrored. So I will email you this so you have a copy of it. But I'm just going to read it and talk about it this way. I tried for 3 hours to make the other ways work, and they just were not working, so I apologize. Slide number 1. Considerations for ELL Evaluation by Bailey Kimzey. Slide number 2. Students sometimes speak with dialects or differences in language that are related to their culture. What is your professional opinion on how these differences impact assessment approaches in oral language? The bullet point that I used was, one of the hardest parts about learning the English language is sounds can have multiple meanings and spellings. Certain leniencies should be given to learners who have English as a second language when conducting oral language assessments over these types of dual meaning scenarios. An example of a dual meaning scenario would be the word foul. Foul can be spelled F-O-U-L or it could be spelled F-O-W-L, and it has different meanings. And so when an educator is giving an English learner an oral assessment, they could be talking about a pen, and the pen that the English learner is assuming is a pen you draw or write with, but the assessment is actually talking about a pen that you stick, like a pin and needle, a pin that you stick in when you're sewing. And so these differences can cause errors on an oral assessment simply from the fact that we have dual meaning words. They sound the same, but they mean different things. I'm going to slide up to the next slide. Oh. Oh my goodness, I'm sorry. What intervention options are available to students who are English learners if they need additional services? The bullet point that I used was, the best solution is to substitute an assessment that creates problems for English learners with an assessment that does not. If this isn't an option, the assessment can be evaluated with separate baseline for members of the student's language group. So what I mean by this is that if there is an assessment that the English learner is taking and they're struggling with, there is curriculum and assessments that have been proven to be effective for different ethnicity, cultural, and language groups that you can find and utilize for your English learner who's struggling. This is an informal approach. However, it can be proven effective to make sure that you get accurate results for their assessments. The other option that I put, if it isn't an option, the assessment can be evaluated with members of the student's language group. Oh yeah, that's what I said. The other option is you can go old-fashioned. I didn't include this in my bullet points, but you can go old-fashioned and you can give the student an English test and then also one with their home language in it, and you can adjust the scores as needed based on how they scored with their first language and dialect considered in the old-fashioned test, and then you adjust the scores accordingly. And the last slide that I have is the last question. Why are students who are culturally, linguistically diverse sometimes over or under-identified for special education services? The bullet point that I used was, Often the resources needed to evaluate the student in their native language are not available. This can force the teacher to make assumptions without fully understanding the depth or lack thereof of the student understanding the subject. Some other reasons for errors are when students are being assessed for special needs, they are not assessed in their dominant language. They are usually assessed in English. And if they're not assessed in their dominant language, then therefore they cannot score accurately based on their dominant language. Another reason, like I said, is that sometimes teachers don't have the right resources to assess students, so they don't. And what they do is they assume and they place these students based off assumption. Some students will assume that the dialect of the student is better or great, and so they just place them in the general education classroom when really they might not need to be there. They might need special education services, and sometimes they just assume that their dialect is bad because like if the student's first language was Spanish, which most of them are, Spanish does not translate to English accurately. They have different meanings and context behind their words. And so if an educator was translating, if the student had a test in Spanish and the educator was translating those answers to English, it would not be accurate because they don't translate that way. And so then the educator could place them just by assumption of that with special needs services when really the student might do well in a general education classroom. What teachers need to do is they need to adjust their curriculum and put the student in the classroom before they send them over to be assessed for special education services. They need to put them in the classroom, adjust the curriculum, find something that has been proven to be effective for students of their same language group, and adjust accordingly that way. And then they would hopefully be able to assess them accurately on where, if they need special education services or if they just need English language services. And that is what I would say for that. And those are the answers to my question. Thank you. Like I said, I will email you over a copy of my PowerPoint. Thanks.